Good morning, good afternoon. I think most of our attendees are from Europe, so good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? Great, great. We're seeing more people coming through. Whilst we wait for a few more minutes until further attendees are coming through, just wanted to say hi and introduce and welcome everyone to the first day of Monetization Week. Monetization Week is our inaugural monetization online weekly series. Now we've decided to start this and launch this event because during my attendance and participation in several offline events where we saw a lot of publishers having challenges with monetization, i.e. their revenue has significantly dropped, particularly in Q3 last year. It dropped because changes in search, changes in RPM rates. Like they had a lot of different reasons why they saw a drop in revenue. I thought there had to be a session, a talk, or event that had to cover a wide range of strategies, practical strategies that can help publishers be optimistic and move forward with rebounding or diversifying. I think maybe you've probably heard, whether it's in other events that you've attended or through other articles, that diversification is key. So our series of experts are going to be talking about a wide range of topics throughout the week. We're talking about today the difference between ad and subscription revenue and sort of the bigger picture around how to approach that. We have a session around native advertising from our key sponsors, Giozo, to sales, to essentially first-party data strategies. So we've got a wide range of topics, very current, very applicable for 2024 and onwards. And with that, we also appreciate the collaboration that we have with our partners. Thank you, Giozo, for being a premium sponsor, with the support of our media partners, FIPP, the European Business Review, and the Czech Publishers Association, who have helped us to bring awareness and make most of our cause with this event. So with that, sorry, before we jump in, just quick housekeeping rules, and we'll jump in as we want to help unpack a lot of the insights that we have put together for today. In terms of asking questions, feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. This is going to be a presentation-led call for today. The other ones would be more conversation focused, i.e. fireside chats or teardowns and demos. Place your questions in the Q&A feature on Slack. You just simply click on the More button and you can see that, or you can put it in chat like Saida has done, Saida, my colleague. And yeah, anything in terms of when you have your quick question, if you do want to add on more context on there, just we'll help you unmute your microphone, and then you can sort of ask more further. We want to make this as interactive as possible, and yeah, definitely upvote if you want to, so we can help prioritize some of the questions. We want to go through as much questions as we can. So with that, let's jump right in, and I'll share my screen and let's get started. Perfect. So the name of the game today is ad versus subscription revenue, analyzing performance and models. Let's talk about the argument around ad revenue. So I held a similar, I did hold a talk early this year, and what I was able to do was, through a mixture of data that came from Ad Pushup, which is a programmatic ad tech company. They gave me some qualitative feedback from them. They had a Q1. They also had a Q1 webinar with Google because they were a Google Premium publisher. And a lot of the conversation that came from those discussions and qualitative feedback from their customers was that they all saw a big drop in ad revenue from ad banners throughout the end of last year, Q4 last year. They didn't go down into much detail around why, but they saw interstitial and video ads be very steady in terms of performance. They also were able to extract that specific categories were dropping a lot more than others. So computer and electronics, so you can, I mean, the categorization names are a bit disjointed with what you might be associating with in terms of niches and niches. So computer and electronics would be, some areas of tech and so forth, jobs and education, law and government. A lot of these are sort of why the biggest CPM declines. But what were some of the things that publishers took steps towards in the beginning of this year to help try to mitigate this decline? They focused on going on premium level deals. So, rather than relying purely on which we've seen across the board, a lot of sites which had maybe one or two key traffic sources as their growing area of revenue and traffic, they didn't have much revenue diversification. So these publishers, to mitigate the drop in revenue, they decided to diversify and go more for more premium partners. A lot of them also took more training and education to help understand how to develop reader revenue and engagement strategies, which we'll elaborate some on now, and then you'll also see that throughout the week, particularly towards the last day on first-party data strategies. A lot of them also focused on ad recovery. So ad recovery is an area where it's heavily underestimated. You can see recovery of 15 to 30% of your revenue by simply tweaking your user experience for users that are using JavaScript using ad blockers, or they are blocking their JavaScript, to provide them an alternative experience to say, hey, if you want to continue to read our content, please enable JavaScript, or please enable XYZ, or they might have an ad come up or a message come up instead that can lead them to somewhere else. So that was much effective tactic which helped with ad recovery. Having a new ad format, which is called the parallax ad format, which is essentially a smaller, more compact size ad that was sitting on the right-hand corner, that essentially it was something that AdPushUp also experimented with, and I think we're seeing a lot more of the ad tech companies, programmatic ad tech companies, doing that as well. Testing and making that responsive helped improve the ad revenue gains by 30 to 40%. So they kept on testing, and they found that was a good medium for this period of time. Being able to then put price flooring across all the basically the AdX, and the ability to not go lower also forced the supply side to the demand side to sort of put more pressure on them, and resulted that to maintain any further drop. But they had to balance out between making sure that they didn't impact the supply side, and at the same time, find the right partners to collaborate with. So, but being able to put a floor on your price and preventing that from going further down is very key to keep maintaining RPMs. And the continuing update of pre-bid was another thing that they did to help ensure that there was enough supply towards the ad rollout for the programmatic ads. So there were some steps taken there. Now, what we're also seeing here, and to give more context as to some of the reasons why some of those things were done to avoid why some of those things were done to mitigate the drops, is we have things like the calm effect before the storm. So many ad events such as Olympics and elections are taking place. So there, and even now, when I've been speaking to publishers in Q2, it's not Q1 and Q2, the sales process has definitely gone longer. So there's been only a very small number of cases where direct sales bookings have met at least 80% of the expectations. A lot of them have their pipelines still much lagging, and they haven't seen that recovery. And that is due to part of, I think, key events coming about. So people are still holding back on their spend. There's also probably now more inflationary pressures now coming across the board, which is bringing more pressure towards that. But we'll see. For that. The Q2 expected growth, as you can see at the top here, is ties back, I think, to the come before effect aspect, because many of the things like sports and fitness, telecom, beauty and health were things that were are going to expect a bounce back. In addition, I think it's also just the way that ads were overly utilized, and so we reached out to, Red Volcano over LinkedIn. I found that some of their sample data of 1,000 publishers that they had set pre-bid ads on, and 40% of the ads saw only 40% of the ads were filled with these with MREC and leaderboards that were driving revenue. The rest were literally not being effectively utilized, or they weren't creating a return. So that essentially gives you an idea of already some things to take away in terms of reviewing your ad performance and making sure that particularly having the concurrent placement of the ads at the top above the heading, in between the menu navigation and on the sidebar, ad placements that essentially help better perform and sustain your ad performance, rather than seeing a lot more ads within the content, and broken that down. This is generally speaking based on the data that's there, but not necessarily going to be true. Like in the as you go through and segment further, that could be a little bit different. But in generally speaking, this is what we can help emphasize from that data. And I guess also what we can see as well in the bigger, broader macro perspective, as I mentioned to you before, is that we already saw that impact happening during Black Friday last year. So you can see here that we saw a lot of people spend significantly higher. So year on year, there was an increase on 59% spend, but the return on investment actually saw a 26% drop. This was a study from I've I think, where they looked at the benchmark from Amazon ad spend, and this is what they saw. We saw the spend and the sales go up, but the return on investment, they had to work harder to get that money back. So definitely seeing still, I think, especially as we're seeing Google emphasize on AI overview and ad placements there, which is going to be you're going to be tweaking a lot of that. Facebook is seeing a bounce back in the Facebook ads, but still not as strong as it was same time last year. Definitely need to be very on top of managing the ad spend, and brands will be very on top of managing the ad spend and being very constrained on how they're going to spend it. So in terms of ad performance and review ad performance, that aspect, we can grab those insights and sort of prioritize from there. But we can also see from here, and the reason why I'm bringing this study, SEO study here, is because it also ties back to what I was speaking about in over relying on just letting the ads run itself, and the impact that sort of the correlation that had with sites that weren't did see an impact in the traffic drop. So the study that I'm showing you here is from Zippy SEO. They're a consultancy. It's a SEO consultancy based in the US from a former Moz employee called Sarah Shepard. He does a lot of correlation studies. So he collected, I think 150 sites from memory, and he assessed the criteria of a bunch of these things, such as whether or not content pages had content, the number of ads, whether they had stock images, and on the left hand side you can see that much of these, that whether when they had more ads or affiliate links in general, did see an impact from the helpful content update, which was we saw one in September. We saw the recent update that happened in March, April, be integrated within the core algorithm as well. So it's something just to keep in mind of because we're seeing a lot of sites obviously hurt at the moment, which is unfortunate to see. So to summarize, looking at the ad performance side, a lot of the sites were primarily ad driven. They had ads as the main model. They were dependent on the platform, one or two platforms in terms of traffic. They didn't pretty much the main offering as the product was just the content and pretty much it. And sorry, the other thing as well was that minimal site changes were done to the site. So obviously this doesn't mention that fact, but it was pretty much the case where we saw the 2020 to 2022 traffic bumps that many published sites were experiencing. So much of the site design was kept the same, but they kept adding on new sections, which probably didn't reflect entirely on the true positioning of their current site. So those were a lot of the same signals and so forth. So yeah, that's ad revenue and the insights from there. Now let's compare that with the subscription revenue and insights. I pulled the data and the public available information that was online. We see in my head the subscription summit, AOP, which is the publishing body cohort of primarily UK publishers. They pretty much looked at and determined what's the actual priority of subscriptions within as a growth lever. We can see here that it's going to be from there's 35% of the participants of this, which is I think it says answers are 109 from the question of priorities, 120 on challenges. So priority is going to be on subscription volume growth. From here, we see here subscriptions. This is they have a sample of I think 1,000 publishers here. So we can't really necessarily call it a sample, but their benchmark of their cohort. They see this as a 16% increase of and priority in terms of their focus. And so challenges from subscriptions. I mean, they see that as a growth lever because obviously publishers. So I'm not saying obviously, but if you think about the thought logic, and I think maybe most of the attendees would also consider this as well. We've got the fact that the publishers want to see consistent revenue. They want to be able to connect directly with their audience and develop that relationship directly instead of being relying on a particular platform, which we saw many of the ad dependent sites see a drop in. And they want to be able to find new ways of sort of providing new different options and complementary offerings. So we can see that works. And I think what's interesting as well is, sorry, just to add here, we're seeing particularly, we don't see it in here, but the small data that you can also see here is that sponsorship is expecting to grow quite a large amount. Other classifieds, miscellaneous, I can't really say what they mean by this, but because they didn't say that in their study, but a lot of this is leading to the first party preparation and depreciation. So also seeing a lot of publishers have that first party data pipeline flowing, but then they're saying, well, what can we do to actually leverage that? And so I think, yeah, definitely sponsorships and direct approach was promising as well. People had also considered looking at events as a way to, which is going to be interesting. Radu, one of our speakers on day 3, offline versus online publishing monetization, they will talk about how they've used events as a growth lever, which I think a lot of people are going back to again. We're seeing here basically on how those other direct audience-led strategies are going to be critical to diversify revenue. But the question, I think a lot of people, I think what I've seen though is, and what a lot of people stumble upon, which is, again, we're looking at the arguments for the for and against on each of the channels. Is that something that you can just create, and you looking at creating value by maybe offering benefits and so forth? Is that and unlocking the content, is that going to be exactly the way that you need to approach to doing this? Well, no, that's probably not going to be the best way forward. We've seen a lot of also subscription offerings. We also went through that journey as well, where we created a subscription offering with just locking content. And yeah, I mean, if you don't have enough of the funnel coming through of users, and having significant traffic, and we're seeing here that there is a traffic decline even for publishers that are heavily investing in new subscription. If you don't have enough of that funnel coming through, if you don't have exactly the way to understand at which points people are engaging to then convert to a subscriber, then essentially you are further limiting yourself from growing. And most of the publishers, anyways, anecdotally speaking, aren't leveraging that as a primary revenue channel. Whilst ad revenue is still a big percentage of it, and it's still decline. It's a declining percentage. It's still a large percentage of it, and sort of that's where we try to figure out, okay, well, what's going to be the way that you can actually grow this sustainably, or grow this in a way that can help you validate the need for you to actually create a subscription offering. You're seeing in front of you here some data from UP Data, and they went through the process of sort of reverse engineering and seeing, because we've seen, I mean, there's been news reports and news that New York Times is continuing to grow, that it's profitable. We're seeing a lot of the companies now trying to just replace the Facebook deals and the Google deals with the OpenAI deals. What's actually helping them to actually grow this? We're seeing here that essentially Wordle and the continual acquisition of products is what's actually driving the engagement as they're bundling the products. Now, what New York Times is tapping into is that mindset and that aspect for them, that whilst they are a general news site, they do understand the audience, and they're taking an audience approach in terms of targeting and product bundling aspects that go into pastime meaning like how you spend your time after you're working and so forth. So people are typically cooking, people are typically spending time watching sports, playing games, and because the game aspect was really embedded as part of the culture in newspaper culture after the war, when people wanted to spend some time, they had crosswords and everything else, and that's sort of since translated to online, even though that's not the same scenario. So games was actually the key growth driver to help them increase their engagement, and therefore develop supporting product bundles that led them to increase the subscriber value, therefore increase the engagement of users coming, rather than just reading the news and then jumping off. They have that journey of people, like, if I'm reading, then probably after that I'm going to, and if I'm traveling home, or if I'm at home and I'm just want to pull my mind off other things, and I'm probably going to watch a game and we'll probably prepare cooking and so forth. So they've done audience first approach in targeting that, and that's why they've seen their engagement go up, even though you can see here that the news content is being very consistent. So really, instead of just focusing on creating benefits in terms of value, it's about bundling, which drives engagement and value. So yeah, I think to answer the question here, right, is gamification the reason for it? Is bundling the reason for it? 100% it is. And so that's what we're going to look into as well, particularly as we go through this week and explain how that works. So I'll give you some preview around that, but we can continue that as well towards the end of the week. So we compared each of them. What's the revenue channel that rules them all? I think, humbly speaking, we all know it's diversification. It's also about particularly building communities, and being able to transition away from third-party cookies to first-party. And so, what's the thing that we need to look at to take inspiration and the model to take us to move forward towards that? It's about focusing on niche. It's not focusing on mass. So look, I know it's easy to say that. It's particularly when we're seeing many of the larger publishers dominating in search, because a lot of the preference is being given towards that. And I'm speaking I'm speaking as I'm speaking as an advocate, even though SEO is my core background. And we're seeing that in our experience as well with a lot of the bigger publishers coming up, because literally the content velocity is what's helping them outrank many of the niche sites. But niche still works. It's still areas of pockets of resistance that we still see, particularly if you understand how to leverage programmatic or find ways of creating bundles that can provide users value, and particularly when you're combining brand building signals towards your niche brand offering to your core audience. I can give you one. I don't have the slide for this, but I can give you one quick example. So, lifestyle was a particular big area that I think a lot of publishers have experienced a big drop in, because many people who have in the past created topics that have just focused on the search user instead of focusing on the broader context. But one of our previous publishing clients, they do have clusters focusing on, particularly men's hairstyles and so forth, but they focus on their core direct audience, which is men from 20 to 35, and they cover different aspects, whether it's about men's net worth or being able to sort of like even they cover travel, which is very broad itself, but they've done such a narrow focus on each of those categories that, and plus on top of that, they've created their own offline magazine, and they have a Facebook community of loyal audiences, and a lot of these brand building signals, in my opinion, and the way that they've written their content is in a tone of language that is not sort of not generic, and it's speaking to the audience. Those things have actually helped them see a recovery from the first HCU update. So for me, like, I still see niche is the way to go, because that gives you that focus, that gives you that way to grow your audience, and nurture your audience. So, but to do that strategically, it's about being B2B. So besides being user-centric, it's about being data-focused, it's about being multi-platform, it's about being multi-revenue. So we're being data-focused because by having that information, you know exactly how your audience, and there's a label side that's going to be an attractive pool to your sponsors, to your advertisers, which is why we saw from the AAP study a jump up in the potential sponsor revenue. That's also how we sort of, to be frankly speaking, we rely on one of those main models to help us to sustain our efforts. Multi-platform. So I know that you might be thinking, hey, that means do I have to be on multiple channels like a TikTok, or doing a lot of different things, and I can't do this all at once? Sure, that indirectly does mean that to some aspect, but we also mean, when we're talking about multi-platform, is again back to the concept of how do you actually create brand signals that legitimizes your who you are, so that, for example, even if changes do happen, like what we're experiencing with search and AI, that you are resilient, and you can then turn up the lever in one area, and then you can still keep that going until things subside, and then go back towards that. So whether it's combined, I think one of the key things you will see interesting is the offline and online event. That will definitely help you better visualize and understand, help contextualize a lot more of the multi-platform approach that we would want to be talking about. Multi-revenue is pretty straightforward. It's about multiple revenue streams, but we want to tie that back to the products that you're bundling, not necessarily saying, hey, we offer sponsorships, we offer advertising banners. That just goes back to the content. Content is channel agnostic. It can be appropriated everywhere, but if we bundle that product together, then that is what, again, tie back to the example for New York Times. They understood that that's going to increase the subscriber value because they can tap into the audience that they're looking for. So think about it from a more B2B perspective. I think one thing to add on to this before we move on to the next steps is, B2B was traditionally seen as, the publishing sites that would just regurgitate a press release. They have general news around certain industry awards and events, and maybe a directory, and that's it. No, it's become a lot more sophisticated. If you see, for example, Foundry.com, Foundry.co, and how they've been able to, let me see if I have that here. No, sorry, I don't have that here. Foundry.co, and how they understood that after certain aspects, they don't only just provide advertising, but I can jump to that. They don't just provide advertising as a main channel, but they eventually grow to becoming a marketing revenue platform where, due to building their first-party pilot platform in-house, if someone comes to them and says, hey, I want to reach the CEO of a 5 to 10 person company that has this much discretionary money, and they typically do it at this time of year, they can probably come back to them with that response and say, hey, this is the options that we provide you pretty quickly, because they've been able to mature their offering to get to that point, and be a strategic partner. And they've been able to have the infrastructure that can allow them to not only build their traffic in their audience, but also to be able to collect that information for the potential advertisers. So I jumped the first step, but once you have the CDP, which I'll go through, you then need to figure out what's going to be realistic for you when you're bundling your products. What kind of revenue monetization you can offer based on what stage you're at. So I typically see many publishers still in the first 2 to 3 stages. But can you push this? Can I challenge everyone here on the call? Can I challenge everyone that might listen to this in the future to then think about, before the actual push takes place, how you can evolve your audience and your traffic towards this next phase. You need to have, obviously, the pipeline to be able to create your first party data strategy, to then be able to determine when you can create a subscription product, when you can create and improve your ad revenue. So first step is being able to get the intent enrichment from your website. So you can see here that even starting off with many of our publishers, if you're SME publishers and maybe you can't fork out 5 to 6 figure per year licenses for these type of solutions, that you can start off with Clearbit, and it can show you a list of potential partners and companies that come to your website and see how you interact with it. A simple tag on the header, and that's on the way that you go. Then it's about how you can actually marry the ad tech and martech solutions to then be able to determine the kind of products you create. So this visualization from Yukta Media, they call it ERP. You can use a customer data platform to start off with, and then you can evolve it to a CRM or ERP. You want to be able to grab all these solutions and all these offerings that go into these you grab all these data points to then create you the insights to then utilize to maximize your channel performance and potentially your offerings thereafter. So that's what you need to think about when you take the step towards actually continuing the different approaches on the different revenue strategies. Then what you need to think about is, we know that ads are going to be here. It's nothing that it's not going to be something that's going to go away quickly, and it's still part of the ecosystem of the web. So it's about how do you approach having the right ad formats. Like I mentioned to you before, like the study showed from Red Volcano, from the collection of previous tags, that there was the MREC and the leaderboard ladders that they were doing. It doesn't mean that you have to stop and just propose that or show those, because that drives most of the revenue. You got to think about your strategy based on these aspects. So platform centric. So if you're looking at basically driving traffic through arbitraging, for example, from ads, then which platform is that? Are you going to be using display? Are you going to be using display? Are you going to be using CPC to help you to improve that, for example, to get the return? Or are you going to use social, for example? Final stage, it means to target particular ad layouts and ad formats based on what stage the user's at. So if they're at a comparison stage, would a contextually relevant ad, an contextual ad that might be talking about showing a link to a resource going to be helpful, or is it going to, do you want to show when someone's at a comparison page or a review page to a particular brand partner or a brand product to reinforce that messaging? That's sort of final stage of that alignment. Sorry, it seems like I've doubled up here. Message adaptive strategies. There was audience segmentation as well. Sorry, so I think that's what we're talking about. Audience-centric strategy is looking at being able to determine how users consume that content for that particular topic and intent. So, for example, you might have users that, particularly for health, because we know that we're seeing a lot more short form content, users might be targeting, you might be consuming that content in bite sizes through short form videos. So maybe in terms of your ad format selection for those topics, you might have a premium placement of video ads and monetize for that instead of normal display ads. Or maybe it's about brand native ads that can then lead them towards high quality resources and solutions. That's something that we're increasingly playing around with as well at the moment, and helping our clients with to tweak, because that, in the end of the day, like comes back down to the point now, right, where more ads might not mean a positive correlation. So you have to be very selective on how to approach that. So a lot of those video ads can be put in the middle of the content so that it breaks up the content, but then also gives a break for people that might get fatigued and jump off to just watch that and then continue on. So I'm considering the user experience as well on top of the audience preference towards that. message adaptive strategies. So that can talk about different, it's calls to act. It's essentially, to oversimplify, it's the calls to action. So it's just looking at, are you going to be presenting the right ads, the right messaging at the right time? And then adaptive testing and optimization. So we'll talk about that a little bit more shortly, but it's also having adaptive ads. So it's responsive ads, and then being able to see the data for that, and then being able to format the layout of the ad based on the responsiveness of the ads, and being able to test that and then use that data to keep iterating the performance. So that can probably just that means essentially a combination of all these things, but being able to show that for particular audiences at particular stages. So once you have your data pipeline, once you keep formatting and iterating on the ad performance on that, then think about when's the right time to actually, how do I actually go about bundling that? So yeah, as I was talking about, the New York Times focuses on a particular audience. They talk about the national interest of, sorry, I didn't explain that a little bit more, but they talk about actually the natural interest of the US in terms of politics and all these things. And so they're able to tap into that pastime with the news, the games and so forth from there. So what this is showing you is that depending on the type of publisher you are, you can essentially consider whether these products are right for you. So yeah, so for example, if you're business information services, you can sort of cover these points and then tie that back to creating specific products based on the revenue and the traffic that you're getting. So you can see here that with New York Times, they not only have news, but they've created games, cooking, they have the audio for particular stories as a premium value add, and they've integrated deep level coverage of sports and product recommendations. So yeah, what does that mean in terms of ad revenue? Sorry, comparing, doing both ad revenue, subscription revenue, and doing monetization in general. Again, this is more of a precursor to more of a chat that we're going to have on day 4 with the sales team, the sales and revenue considerations. But you've got to do what you can do within your capacity. So particularly if we have solopreneurs here, you're probably the best to be able to run the sales for these, to be able to generate the revenue from these offerings. If you have small teams, then you can start delegating that more, plus adding more additional tech stack, because you want to have a person that's championing each of the tech stack that you have running, or I mean an area of your ad monetization, or sorry, publisher monetization. You want to have someone championing each area of your monetization, and then as you grow larger, then you can just prioritize more on the larger deals whilst you have that rolled out with more people stacked underneath to handle each of those areas, so that you can get more volume, you can get more sales. So I'm putting it out there a little bit just to whet your beak in the interest that we're going to be talking about in with Suzanne and Radu in the following days, but definitely check that out. And in terms of OSB testing, what we always suggest is looking at a bunch of things, such as when you're going to be looking at on the underlying pinnacle with whether it's subscription revenue or ad revenue is traffic. So SEOtesting.com is a lower entry point towards doing that, particularly if your site's driving traffic from organic search. So you can track things such as we'll share the resource in the white paper that we're sharing, where we'll have, there's different tactics that they have listed in the article, such as the change inclusion of quotes versus how you format your headings to linking to between articles and so forth. A lot of these things you can track, see the improvement of that, and then you can also then, if you've got your GA4 or your reports integrated together, then you can see the qualitative impact of those efforts to improve the audience, the content engagement and revenue particularly from ad revenue. You want to continue to see how you can increase the subscription, the user value, all the time by having session recording and click tracking solutions. You don't need to, I'm not telling you go and spend, again, 5-6 figure sums to do that. You can start as simple as using Clarity, which is free. You just add a tag and it starts using recording sessions. So that can, again, give you, and it has event tracking connection with GA4. So you can also see that side by side the users, if you want to see a particular user interaction that you set up on Clarity itself, then how that impacts the engagement. And then you can think from back, when you have your goal and you're working backwards and thinking about how to improve it, then this can give you a great idea to help you to start better product bundling. Then the final point is continuing to improve on monetization, and that comes back down to reporting and attribution. So yeah, I did speak about GA4 as his first step, but then you've got affiliate revenue, you've got all these other aspects. From what I can see in the market at the moment, We Can Track is one of the more comprehensive solutions that can, in a unified dashboard, show you all the different reporting metrics. And so then you can see for particular content strategies, like if it's impacting, how it's benefiting affiliate or vice versa. And we want to eventually get to that point where you're thinking about how to actually have an ERP that can create your unified dashboards for you. So with that, thanks everyone. Sorry, we've got some time left, so I'd love to jump into the questions and help you guys answer those. So the first question we have. Sorry, one second. I'm just gonna increase the chat. Can you give an example of a publisher and what kind of community they've built? Sorry. Can you give an example of a publisher and what kind of community they built around subscribers? Yes, I can. We can definitely can. So, in terms of some examples of subscribers, from a B2B perspective, Set for More has done. I mean, I think a lot of whether it's Business Insider, although they divested the businesses now with eMarketer, they've done a good job on that. And then we have a lot of the from a B2B side. So I'm going blank a bit, but I'll speak about Set for More and Business Insider. So what they did was, which is I think a tactic that I think it's good to mention, is that and actually Wired, I remember now Wired is another good example as well. So Business Insider and Wired, what they did is they give you the option of a $1 subscription for a small period of time. You might think to yourself, okay, is that why they're doing that for such a cheap price? But at every step of the stage of their funnel, as they're creating their content, they're trying to build trust within that content. So they're saying to you, hey, just pay us $1. That's it. That you can call it your acquisition cost. Then you'll see what other good content that we had. So Business Insider, has a lot of their, particularly for the 25 to 35-year-olds, how they want to make it and be successful. A lot of the unique reporting and insights and content around that. Why it had a lot more of that featured reporting around the intersection between science and technology and so forth. And they have other things like community merches that they provide at a heavier discount, and they have their inaugural events. So what they're doing eventually is they're creating steps towards creating offline products that they can then charge. I mean, they will charge those advertisers a premium, but then for users, they'll create offerings that can be palatable as they continue to commit with them longer term. But the lever that they did use that is like, hey, subscribe for us for $1 for X period of days, or a lower amount. I hope that helps answer the question, Preeti. So, next question. Vitor says, will this be shared? Yes, it will be shared. Sorry, thanks, Sarah, for jumping in. Just see if there's any other questions. I think I can add one other common question, and if there isn't any other questions, maybe we can call it a wrap for today. But one of the things that typically ask is how to juggle all these priorities. Where you have a constraint with resources. I think with a lot of these things, it's new investment into new things, but you're also constrained with bandwidth of time. My answer to you is that I face the same thing all the time, and the way to go about it is to literally focus on first being able to particularly with the advertising revenue channel, go back again to your goals and say, like, rather than being comfortable with a smaller buffer, increase the buffer. I take an arbitrage approach. Basically, start with the arbitrage approach, then rather than focusing on building the team to be able to create the output as the first priority, use shared resources, but then be able to build on the supporting stuff, like whether it's admin, whether it's sales, to help you to actually sell the product that you want to offer. So long as you have the scope and focus to be able to help deliver that initially, then once you have done that successfully a few times, then you can afford to continue to expand the team, and then that can organically grow itself. So that way you can avoid yourself in being stuck in different areas. If you're at the point where you're sort of continuing to be stuck between a lot of different areas, then that might be a good time for you to reflect and see whether or not you've progressed enough in the journey of the maturity model that you'll have, or whether it's, to be frank, the right niche, the right size of opportunity. Because ultimately, that can speak to whether or not your audience size is not big enough, or whether you're not answering the right questions to your audience. Because at some point, as you're committing towards your growth, towards everything, it'll become easier for you to, for example, provide content solutions for your partners to be able to serve ads and grow your traffic. It will become more scalable. So it's things that you should consider and question about as well. So with that, yeah, thank you, Elisa. Please, everyone, whoever hasn't, you can quickly jump in and put in your links to connect with each other. We'll help you do the same. But thanks again for everyone joining on this first session of Monetization Week. Tomorrow's session will be from Iva Babal from Jirza. Thanks much. Before I go through that, I'll go through and talk about the other agenda for the week. So tomorrow is going to be debunking the myths of native ads, fact and fiction from native ads, misspotting with Jirza, Iva Babal from Jirza. We've got, after that, on day 3, the offline and online panel, publicization, monetization synergies. So we're going to be having Gabriella and Radu that will be talking about from their sides of the business, one which has more of a primarily online and affiliate monetization business, and one that's more events-based, how they approach monetization, partnerships, and being able to consider synergies between them so that you can create a 360 view. We then have day 4, Suzanne and Sperling from Structure Media, and Radu Trisina. So we have a second Radu, fortunately, and they're going to be sharing their experiences around creating a monetization team. So essentially helping you to understand what's the considerations on some of the things I talked about in terms of the sales size, who has to do what, and their experiences with structuring from that. So yeah, and then the final day, I'm going to be jumping back on, and I have a little bit more of a tactical play for you guys on the first party data strategies. So thanks, Sai, for helping to post all that there, and Mac for proposing that. Yeah, if you want to learn more about strategy publishing, please visit strategypublishing.com for more of our content and our community and our sister site that can help you with implementing audience development and monetization strategies on sdpmedia.com. With that, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And until next time, thank you guys.